Hello, my darlings. I hope you're doing very well. Welcome to a new episode of Don't Hold Me Back. My name is Jules de Bellis. I use they, them pronouns, and I will be your host. As usual, today I'm not going to be alone. I will have a magnificent expert by experience co-hosting this episode, and we're also going to have an incredible guest. Today's episode is Hospital Passports and Universal Care Plan. So we're going to discover everything we need to know about these two tools. So please welcome Rodney and Trisha.
Hi, my name is Rodney. I work for Elfrida and I work for people with a learning disability with the Wichita and UCH.
Thank you, Rodney. Welcome.
Hello, it's great to be here. So my name is Trisha Handley. I'm a learning disability nurse by background, but at the moment I work for NHS England in the London region, and my job is around trying to reduce health inequalities for people with learning disabilities.
Amazing. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about it?
Oh, about my job. So I started in NHS England just under a year ago. And what we know is if you have a learning disability, and I know you will know this, Rodney, that your chances of dying earlier in life is much higher than someone who doesn't have a learning disability. So part of my role is around working with other people to think about how we can reduce those inequalities. Yes, so I work on a couple of projects. So the two big projects I work on is around the Universal Care Plan that we're going to talk about today. So which is quite an exciting thing to talk about, I think, because I'm really motivated by it. And also about the reasonable adjustment digital flag. Now, that might be a podcast for another day because that's also really important to lots of people up and down the country if you have an impairment or disability of any sort. So they're my two main projects.
Wow, amazing. Thank you very much, Trisha. Everything you just introduced sounds amazing, and I'm sure it's going to be a big positive change for people with learning disabilities. So, Rodney, I'm going to start with a question for you. As our expert by experience, do you know what a hospital passport is?
Yes, I do. A hospital passport is where people tell them their illnesses, and it gives them the doctor the question what their health and what their needs are, and where their help and their a lot of things what their needs and they could go by.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Thank you, Rodney. And to make it a little bit more simple, it's a document, like a form, I would say, in which a person with a learning disability can write down or can ask somebody to write down all the information that they want the medical professionals to know while they stay in a hospital. So that could be the medications that they're using, but also what their communication needs are and what their preferences are. So sometimes a hospital passport has the look of a traffic light. So you have the red light, which is a red page with everything that you don't want to happen while you're in hospital. And also the important information. For example, if you have specific religious needs, let's say, for example, by your religion, you cannot have blood transfusion. That's an important thing to put down there. But also if you have any allergy, and then you have the yellow light, which is everything that you would like to happen or you would not like to happen, but it's still kind of negotiable. So you can still have a conversation with your medical professionals about it. And then you have the green light. So in there, you can put everything that you prefer experiencing while you're in your hospital. Let's say, for example, that you stay overnight if there's any specific TV program that you would like to watch while you're there, or if there's a specific food that you would like to eat, those kind of things. And usually LD nurses and other medical professionals in the hospital will try and accommodate all your adjustments. So this is what hospital passport's like. And Rodney, have you ever used a hospital passport?
What, being truthful, no one's never asked me in the hospital, and I'm being truthful. And that is the mistake where the hospitals are going wrong. And I'm being truthful here. I won't name hospitals, they should be using them, but they don't use them.
I have to say that I've known medical professionals that work in hospitals that didn't know what a hospital passport looks like. So I think there's a lack of knowledge for loads of medical professionals in regards of useful tools that people with learning disabilities might use to communicate their needs. Yes, Tricia.
I just want to add to what you said, Rodney. So I didn't say this in my introduction, but I actually worked in a hospital for 12 years before I got this job. I used to work in the community, then I worked in the hospital. And what you said is completely true. And I know that. So in the hospital as a learning disability nurse, we get very frustrated sometimes because getting the information out and saying to staff, it's really important you ask someone, have they got a hospital passport, then read it. So I know your story is experienced by a lot of people. You do get great staff who do know and will read it and will act on it and make those reasonable adjustments. But actually, we still know there is an issue, which is why I think when we talk about the Universal Care Plan in a little while, I'm hoping that will change some of that.
Yeah, and I would also say that lots of people with learning disabilities don't know that they might have the right to have a hospital passport. So this is something that I do with all my clients as an advocate. The first thing that I do with them is to fill a hospital passport together, and then I personally send that hospital passport via passport secured email to all their medical professionals. So if they are having hospital appointments at a certain clinic, I would send them the hospital passport. I would send their hospital passport to the GP so that for the future, the GP can send it beforehand. And I always print out a physical copy of it. So when I'm going to the medical appointment in the hospital with my client, I bring it with me just in case of need. But of course, that's not practical. And not many people know of the existence of this hospital passports. And so I believe that that might be one of the reasons why you, Tricia, are working on the Universal Care Plan, kind of.
Let me say one other thing. Now, you won't have experienced this, I don't think, Rodney, because of what you've just told me, but sometimes, so I'm putting myself in your shoes, Jules, and you've just sent the hospital passport via the computer, the internet, to somebody. So if that comes to a nurse or a doctor, what they will probably do is put it on the person's record, yeah? But your hospital record, like lots of people, is often a really large record and there's a ton of information. And one of the problems we sometimes have is, okay, so where is the passport now? It's hidden in all this information that's on the system. Think of a big filing cabinet and you've got 100 documents, and then think about, where's that passport? I'm not sure where it is. And I know that some hospitals have that problem. Some have solved that problem, but not all. So that is a problem. And because it's a paper document, essentially, or even if you send it electronically, you filled it in, yeah, it's been filled in, it's a paper document, essentially. If you want to update it, you have to download it from the computer or print off another one and fill it in again. You have to basically start again, usually. And then you send it again and they re-upload it. So then you've got 2 passports on the system.
I've got one question. What if the system breaks down? What if the system be hacked? It has been hacked, data's been missed, and you got to go through all that rigmarole, going through all that passport, and so a paper is more better than data. Do you agree on that part or not?
That's a very good point, Rodney. What I'd say is you've made a really good point in the sense that when something is in a computer system, it can fail. Because we know banking systems have failed, all sorts of systems have failed, and there's been hacking. So I'm not an expert on cyber security, they call it. Yeah. Most things are very, very secure. So it doesn't happen very often, but it can happen. And if you've got a paper, you've got it there. What I would so in that instance, if the system goes down, you've got a paper copy. There is no reason that you can't have both, I have to say. You can always print out a copy and keep a copy. But what we know about paper copies, they often get lost too. So what I know from my own experience in hospitals is people will bring them in, they hand them over, and then they get lost.
In my experience as an advocate, what you're saying, Tricia, is 100% true. Like, that's why I always print a copy of the hospital passport when I go to appointments with my clients, because 90% of the time, they will just lose their hard copy of their hospital passport, or they would just forget it at home. So that's not very useful in it. So I do agree with Rodney that everything that is on a IT system can be hacked and the data could be leaked. But I don't believe that that's a good enough reason not to try and make the systems better and safer for the service users, the patients, and the professionals working on those systems.
Can I ask you one question?
Yeah, of course.
When you go to an appointment with a client, right, and you got to be truthful here, when does a doctor ask for a passport and did you bring your client a passport? They never ask.
Yeah, that's true. That never happens. And I think that that's why anyone who has a hospital passport and they bring it to medical appointments in hospitals should be the one saying, hey, I have a hospital passport, because unfortunately not all medical professionals are trained to know what a hospital passport is. Lots of hospitals don't use hospital passports. So it happened once, I believe, with a client at Elfrida, that they had a hospital passport, had a hospital appointment into a hospital in London. And when I said, oh, my client has the hospital passport, so can you please have a look at their reasonable adjustments, the face on the medical professionals was like, what are you talking about? So, yeah. Tricia.
Yes, so you've said another very good point, Rodney, because you've got that lived experience. So I'm definitely not going to argue with you about people reading them. So I suppose if you put it like this, so if 100 people with a learning disability went into a hospital with a hospital passport, and then we thought, right, let's take a guess how many nurses and or doctors might ask for it. If I'm being really honest, I think it would be very low. Yeah, my suggestion would be between 10 and 20%. Now, in some hospitals, that might be way too high. So 10 or 20 nurses or doctors. In some, that might be way too high and it's much lower. Do I think it will ever be much higher? I'm not sure. But again, that's based on my experience. So I do think that is definitely an issue. Definitely an issue. So you pointed out a really important issue. And again, I'm hoping that the Universal Care Plan will help with that.
Would you like to share with us what the universal care plan is?
Would it be helpful if I just say a little bit about the difference between the hospital passport and the universal care plan straight away? Because there are some differences, and it might help set the scene a little bit more, because what we're going to talk about today, and what my job is to do, is to try to say to people, let's move away from the hospital passport and start using the universal care plan. It'll take time, but let me say, so the hospital passport is mostly a paper document that sometimes people handwrite, or sometimes they do it on the computer. Yeah. So they fill in a form on a computer. Yeah. Sometimes they print it off and bring it to the hospital. Sometimes, like you, Jules, they'll send it to a nurse or a doctor in the hospital, and sometimes they will go on that person's record. Whereas the universal care plan is done on an online system. So it's not like a separate form. It's an online care plan. Yeah. But also, this isn't just for people with learning disabilities, it's for any Londoner. Yeah. So anybody in London who thinks they would benefit from a care plan, so their GP, their doctors in the hospital, it would be helpful for them to know about themselves, they can have one. Yeah. So that's first of all the difference, because a hospital passport mostly is used by a person who's got a learning disability. A universal care plan is used by anybody. So if I thought it would benefit for me, I could have one. Yeah. Same for you, Jules, and certainly the same for you, Rodney. And some of the people who are using it now, and using it a great deal, are older people, maybe older people who are frail. So people who have got sickle cell, so that's a particular condition. Yeah. The people get ill from time to time. And we know that in London, if you have a sickle cell, you've got a universal care plan. So it doesn't matter what hospital you turn up at, there will be an online care plan in your record. Yeah. And because it's created online, yeah, it's in the system. And what I mean by that is, once that is on the system, so all my health professionals can see it in London, whether they're in the community, whether they're in the hospital, yeah. And even my support workers, if they've done the training and got access, can also see it, yeah. So anyone who's supporting you can see it, yeah. But also, if it needs updating, you can update it, and anybody working with you can update it, and everyone else sees that update. So for instance, if I have a change of medication and my GP says, I'm just going to update your universal care plan, everyone straight away can see that change.
Question. Let's say, for example, that I start working with a new client, and they don't have a universal care plan yet, or maybe they do have one, but they just don't know, and they'd like to add the reasonable adjustments that they are expecting when visiting hospitals. How do I support them adding those information into the universal care plan?
Let's start by saying who can create a universal care plan. So at the moment, all health and care staff can create a universal care plan. Yes? But there's a process that everyone needs to go through in order to do that, in order to create one. You've got to sign up, you've got to do a little bit of training, and then you're ready. Yeah. So if I lived in supported accommodation, so I had staff supporting me in my own flat, they could help me. If I had a community learning disability nurse, they could help me. The GP could help me. Yeah. So it's a range, and my social worker, potentially my occupational therapist or physiotherapist, all of those people can help create a universal care plan. So almost anyone. And in a couple of months' time, people themselves, so Rodney, in a couple of months' time, if you said to me, look, I want a universal care plan, but about 2 months' time, you will then have access to start creating your own, which is a really big step forward. Yeah. So people can do their own hospital passports. At the moment, only a health and care staff can do a UCP, a universal care plan, with the person. So anyone can create one.
I've got 2 questions, right? And this what worries me. right? And I'm being truthful here, right? When did it come in, right? That's the first one, right?
Mm-hmm.
And who's getting the data of this care plan?
So, okay, so who, did you say when, Ronnie? When did it come in?
Yes.
Okay, so now that's a very good question. I'm not quite sure when it first started. So let me tell you, when the Universal Care Plan first started, it had a different name. It was called Coordinate My Care. And it was a care plan around people who were coming to the end of their life. And we know when people are coming to the end of their life, there's often a lot of people involved in their care at home and in the hospital. And this care plan was created to make sure that the nurses at home, the doctors in the hospital, and the family all had a shared care plan. Yeah. And then just over a year ago, it turned into a much bigger care and support plan. Yeah. So it's just over a year. It's been open to all Londoners. So it's not about just someone who's at the end of their life anymore, although people who are coming to the end of their life can use this, and it's a really good tool. It's for anyone. It's for anyone. Now, you said, where does the data go? Yeah. So the data sits on your record. Yeah. Your record, your own personal health record, but then it is shared across the system, across so it sits on, like, I'm trying to explain this. I don't know if I'm going to explain it well. So Jules might have to cut this. I don't know. So you put on your record, say this is it. This is your record here in the middle.
Yeah.
And then in London, we have what's called a shared care record. So we've got the Universal Care Plan, and on your record, it sits within the London Care Record. Yeah, it's a London Care Record. And people from all over London, if they're involved with your care, and it's only people involved with your care, Rodney, so no one else should be ever looking at anyone else's care record unless they're involved in your care, can access that London Care Record. And then on that London Care Record sits the Universal Care Plan.
I have another question for you, Tricia. So what about accessibility? So you said that everyone can ask to create a universal care plan, and they can input data onto their universal care plan. But because this is an online system, don't you think it's not really accessible to lots of people, especially like elder people or people with learning disabilities? There are lots of people that are very independent, so they live on their own, they don't have carers, but they do have a learning disability that might not be able to put their information or their needs or their preferences onto the universal care plan. So what is the NHS doing to decrease those barriers and make the universal care plan more accessible to everyone?
That's a very good question. I think if I'm honest with you, I think lots of people who currently have a universal care plan will probably have got some help or support with it, because you have to create it with a health and or a social care staff member. So you will have done it co-jointly. How I see it is that you sit beside someone, they've got the computer in front of them, and basically you have that conversation and they're typing it all in, maybe. Yeah. So in terms of what you're talking about is accessibility. So the term that we use for that is digital inclusion or digital exclusion. Yeah. So a little bit of my role has been around this topic, because I think it is really, really important that when we're using digital systems and forms like the Universal Care Plan, because can't just be about the Universal Care Plan in terms of digital inclusion, exclusion, we have to think about how people access and use it, because there are lots of apps that are very easy to use, but there's lots of apps that are not that easy to use. What I can say is I know that the NHS is very aware around digital inclusion and digital exclusion. There are teams. I had a meeting this morning And all that meeting was around digital inclusion and digital exclusion. So a lot of people are aware that they need to think about this as an issue because it is an issue. Yeah. Do I think that we're suddenly going to have all our digital programs, things like the UCP and the NHS app, really accessible in the very short term? I still think they're going to be tough to navigate for lots of people. But there is work going on, and there is definite recognition, I would say, about how important it is to make sure everyone, can access things like the Universal Care Plan in the NHS app.
Do you think the care plan will be better than what it is now in the next 5 years or 10 years?
What I think now is the Universal Care Plan, right, is a care plan. So, for instance, say if you had one, Rodney, it was completed, it was on the system, then suddenly you had a bit of an accident on the street. Yeah, I'm sure you're not, but just in case you did, and you went into hospital, someone called the ambulance. Now, at this very moment in time, because you've got a Universal Care Plan, someone calls the ambulance, your name comes up, the ambulance drivers will know that you've got a Universal Care Plan and can read it. So that when they get to you on the street, they might say, oh, this is Rodney, this is how he best communicates, this is how he likes his support and so on. So at this moment, then you go into hospital, and in the hospital, they can also see your Universal Care Plan. Now we're talking about accident and emergency staff. Again, they can see the reasonable adjustments that you've put on your plan. Yeah. What's important, what matters to you straight away. Yeah. Then say, for instance, all is fine and you're discharged, but you're discharged with some new medication. Now they can change that medication on your Universal Care Plan. Yeah. And everyone can see in your care that you've got new medication. Yeah. Before the Universal Care Plan, that really wasn't possible. We only had the hospital passport. And if you fall down in the street, there's no access to immediately to your hospital passport. Now, if you say to me, I'm coming back to the question, do I think it will change in the next 5 to 10 years? Okay. I think there will be, in 5 years' time, there will be some improvement. Yeah, some small improvements. I don't think it'll be massive. I don't think. But I could be wrong. And the reason I could be wrong, Rodney, is because artificial intelligence and AI is being used in ways that is quickening improvement in lots of areas in health and care. So that might do it. In 10 years, yes, I do think a lot more it will be. Yeah. But there's some way to go. So it's going to, I think it's going to be, my opinion is it's going to be very slow, Rodney. Yeah.
If you had, I don't know if you got kids, right, and if you had a person with a learning disability or an elderly person, would you say, right, I want you on this care plan right now? Would you do it right now, or wait for it start up in a couple of months, or do it now?
Okay, so you are full of good questions, Rodney. That's why you're on here. I can see. So would I say do it right now? I think it's helpful to do it right now. Do I think it's urgent for most people right at this minute? Not necessarily. Yeah. I think if you have health conditions where you know that you're in contact with health services quite a lot, I'd say don't wait. Do it now. Yeah. Because what I'd say is, why wait? I would say just do it now. Yes. For those people. But if you're perfectly fit and healthy, you may not think, well, I don't need to do it this minute, but you can if you want.
I have a question. So At the beginning of the episode, you said that this is something for Londoners. Does it mean that there's no universal care plan for people that live outside London? For example, at the moment, I live in Yorkshire, so there's no universal care plan here. Is it a goal to have a universal care plan everywhere in the UK? What is the NHS doing to get there? Lots of questions, sorry.
Okay, so if I forget to answer part of that, you just have to come back to me. So I'm going to answer the first part to say that I'm not aware there's a universal care plan elsewhere in England, but I could be a little bit wrong on that, but I don't think there is a universal care plan elsewhere. So what is the NHS plan for the future is that we'll all have a single care record. Yeah, a single care record that will be accessible or accessed just like the universal care plan. Yeah. So, when I talked about the London care record, which is a shared care record, it sits, this is your record, and within that is the London care record. And on the London care record, there's lots of information that's pulled in from different parts of the health system. Yeah. There will be a single care record in the future. Yes.
All I think of is people with Alzheimer's, people with if with how will they come? How will they access it? All that lot of people with Alzheimer's, people with Parkinson's, all that lot. I think of that when I was in hospital. I got to put this to you. There was this old boy, and this really touched me, and he was a lot opposite, and he was in his 80s, and when he was treated, and I think if this was in place, it would have helped him. And so why wasn't it in place earlier?
Yeah. Again, another good question. What I'd say, Rodney, it is still being rolled out. Yeah, it's still being rolled out. So think about London has about 9 million people. Now, 9 million people are not going to want a care plan. Yeah, a universal care plan. Yeah, but a fair proportion of those people might. Yeah, but we're not there yet. So it still relies on health and social care staff to encourage and support. So this extended universal care plan has only been out about a year. Yeah. So, and it takes time. It just takes time because it is work to sit with somebody and complete one. But a couple of other things I think it might be helpful to say, I think we said. So, Rodney, you talked about all the things that's in the hospital passport. Yeah. And the universal care plan covers all the same things, essentially. It might look a bit different, but essentially it covers all the things that is in the hospital passport and more, really, and more. But also, it's got what's called an intelligent design, the universal care plan. So you only complete the bits that are important. So people don't have to go through lots of paper to see blank bits that are not important. You only complete the things that are important to you. And one of the sections is what matters to me. Yeah. And that's one of the, obviously, really important sections if you go into hospital.
If rolling out now, why can't GPs roll it out now and say, look, we're rolling out the care plan for all British people. We want you on this care plan. And it's going to help the NHS, the So please, will you sign up? It will solve a lot of problems. Do you, have I got a valid point or not?
No, I think you're absolutely right. And for not everyone will want one. I think we have to say that. Not everyone will want a universal.
No.
But you're right, Rodney. For those who want one, there's benefits to the person themselves. There's major benefits for staff who read them. And then there's major benefits for the system, like the NHS and social care, because as a person, you're not having to tell your story all the time. Yeah. Everyone can see you've told your story once, and everybody who looks after you or supports you can read it. Yeah. But what GPs would probably come back and say, I simply don't have enough time and resource to do it. Yeah, I think it's just down to that on the whole. So they prioritize who they promote it to, probably, because there's simply not enough time and resource for them to do it.
One last question for you, Tricia. So let's say someone with a learning disability or their family or their carers want to learn more about the Universal Care Plan. Where can they find the information?
Okay, so there's a website. Now, I don't know if I can give you that website, Jules, and I can also send you a link to an easy read leaflet.
If you have a link to an easy read leaflet, what I can do, I can put the link into the description of this episode so that everyone can access it just by clicking on it.
And a couple of other things I should mention, only because when we're having a conversation, sometimes we don't get all the right information. So just to say that if you've got a universal care plan and you've also got the NHS app, the universal care plan sits on your app. So you've got it on your app. Yeah, it's another way of accessing it. And also, if you go to the GP and they'll say, I can't find the universal care plan, you'll be saying, here it is. It's on my app. And you can show it to your support workers, family, and so on and so forth.
Amazing. Thank you, Tricia. I just want to share with everyone that, of course, what we've covered today might be a little bit difficult to grasp, to understand. So if you have any question about hospital passports and universal care plan, and there's no one in your life that can support you finding the resources, apart from clicking on the link that Tricia will send us very soon, and that will be put into the description. You can always visit our website, www.elfrida.com. Follow us on Instagram at the Elfrida Society. You can send us an email at enquiry@elfrida.com, and you can send us DMs. You can reach out to us, and we'll do everything that is in our power to answer your questions. So thank you very much, Tricia, for joining us today. Thank you, Rodney, our expert by experience, for being such an incredible co-host today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was lovely to meet you, Rodney, and you again, Jules. Thank you.
Thank you.
For all those challenging questions. Thank you very much.
This was another episode of Don't Hold Me Back, the first podcast created with and for people with learning disabilities. And I'll see you in the next episode next month. Bye.